Over 17,000 years ago, humans first painted on the walls of caves. They painted images of animals, horses, bison, and birds. The human-animal bond goes back a long way. Studies suggest that humans domesticated dogs about 15,000 years ago and pigs about 9,000 years ago. So how do we see this relationship today? We have a panel of experts, people who really know their animals. I'm Dave Russell, and this is Our Ohio.
This program is made possible thanks to the generous support from the Ohio Farm Bureau members, producing our food, growing our economy, and making communities stronger. The Ohio Farm Bureau, forging a partnership between farmers and consumers. And by
Nationwide's family of companies has a variety of products to protect your family, with our promise to be there when you need us, from city to farm. Nationwide is on your side.
Funding for Our Ohio is also made possible by the generous support from Turner Farm, a working organic farm and education center in Indian Hill, Ohio. And by your membership support to this public television station. Thank you.
We talked 45 minutes.
I don't go.
I didn't realize it.
Unless I
Really?
get tickets.
Yeah.
Too crowded.
Hi, this is Our Ohio. I'm Dave Russell. Joining us today is Dr. Kathryn Proudfoot, an assistant professor at the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine, and Harold Dates, president and CEO of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Cincinnati, and Charles Wildman, a pork producer from southwestern Ohio and a leader in state and national industry associations. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about this human-animal bond. Each of you, in your lives, in your livelihood, your professions, you're all intimately tied to animals. Katie, let me ask you first of all, what do you do, and what are your goals?
So as in my position as an assistant professor, I teach in the vet school, animal behavior and animal welfare, and I do research as well. So my goals are to improve the lives of animals through this research and through teaching in the vet school, as well as through outreach, so talking to producers and talking to the public.
So is this relatively new to be looking at it from the animal side of things in the vet school?
In the vet school, it's becoming more popular to have animal welfare as part of the curriculum. Ohio State is one of the only vet schools that has it currently, but it's been growing in animal sciences as well. So it's a relatively new field, only about 50 years old. So but it's continuing to grow over the years.
Harold, let's come over to you for just a moment and share with us what you do and what your goals are.
Well, I've been with SPCA Cincinnati for about 40 years. The goal is not to euthanize any more animals if we can possibly get that far. To do that, it's not just us, it's not just the city of Cincinnati or Hamilton County or the state of Ohio, it's the whole United States. We're kind of a throwaway society, and we have to get information out there to people, and we have to get them to keep the animals that they do have in their possession, plus find homes for the rest.
I'm guessing that in 40 years you've seen some things change.
Oh, absolutely. Just what Katie was talking about, the veterinarians coming out of especially Ohio State are more attuned to animal welfare. They help us a lot doing spays and neuters, medical exams, and some of the work that's beyond our capacity as a shelter.
Charles, let's come over to you now. What do you do, and what are your goals?
Well, I'm a farmer. I raise pigs. Most people would say I raise a lot of pigs. My farm will see about 25,000 animals this year. We receive those, we purchase those when they're weaned from a large producer. 2,000 pigs a month arrive at my farm, so 2,000 pigs a month would go to slaughter. And we support that with about 1,000 acres of corn and soybeans. So that's about enough crop to produce about half the feed that those animals would consume. Out of those 25,000 animals, you're talking in the neighborhood of millions of meals, 20 million, 15 million, start or pass through our property each year. So our goal has to be that every one of those meals is a good one.
Chuck, you mentioned that you get the pigs when they're weaned. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, a mother pig, a sow, would give birth, and she would nurse that pig through her lactation period, which is presently is about 21 days long. At that 21-day period, the antibodies in her milk start to decline, and the pig starts picking up his or her natural immune system. So if you wean all those animals together at one time, they never pick up the older pig diseases, and they're never exposed to those diseases. So by receiving 2,000 pigs at a time, I'm receiving 2,000 pigs that have the same health status, and that health status doesn't include older pig diseases. So that's reducing the need for antibiotics, that's reducing the need for all sorts of remedial strategies. It makes management much easier, and it creates a healthy product for the consumer that's never been exposed to several things that the consumer is concerned about.
Katie, from the teaching side of things, what are some of the challenges that you're faced with?
Teaching veterinary students, well, they're very bright to be in vet school. So in that sense, it's not a challenge. They learn very quickly. But I think part of the challenge is to just open up their world to more than looking at welfare as more than just health. So they're coming in with a focus on health and improving health as a way to improve the lives of animals. But there's other ways to look at welfare that includes more than just health. So it is a challenge for me to sometimes open up their minds. It's one of my favorite parts of the job, though, to make them think a little bit outside the box.
Give us an example of thinking outside the box.
So the way that I approach animal welfare is health and productivity is one side. The other side, which a lot of consumers are really interested in, is the idea that animals also need to be able to perform some natural behavior. So they need a little bit of naturalness in their life. And then on the other hand, some others are concerned with the mental states of the animals, which for a long time has been very difficult to measure, but we're developing more and more tools to be able to measure when an animal is feeling pain, for instance, or feeling certain emotions.
Harry, what challenges do you face? All kinds of them, that's for sure. If you're looking at funding, we secure our funds from the general public, so we're out raising funds all the time. There aren't many foundations that cater to the animal world, but we try to utilize those. We have to do an extremely good job with respect to the funds we have, so stretching the dollar and collaborating with other agencies is something that we strive to do.
On the farm, challenges?
Oh, it comes down to one word, which is really two words, I guess, is uncertainty or risk. I mean, everything is uncertain. The only thing certain is that everything is uncertain. Is it going to rain today or not? What am I going to look at my animals and find they're all sick or not? What are the markets going to do? What's the health? What are the regulations? What's the financial? Everything's uncertain. So in an uncertain world, I try very hard on my farm to set up patterns of behavior that reduce those risks, reduce that uncertainty.
Harry, SPCA Cincinnati takes in somewhere around 16,000 animals each year. That really illustrates not only the scope of the work that you're doing, but in my mind, it also illustrates a problem. Why so many strays or abused animals?
Well, to give you a perspective, when I first started in this industry, about 36,000 animals came to SPCA Cincinnati. We managed to pare that down, but there's still a lot of work to do. Half of the animals we're talking about come from owners who get frustrated. They have problems in their households. We need to do a better job at talking to them about behavior. That's one of the big problems. People don't really want to spend the time to train a dog or work with a cat to use the litter box. So our people, when people want to bring them in, have to be more active at keeping those animals away from our facility and in their homes.
But going from 36,000 years ago to 16,000 today, are there fewer animals?
Well, not necessarily. I think spay and neuter has played a great role in that. We've gravitated to the fact that every animal that leaves our facility is altered. Every animal that leaves our facility has a microchip. So identifying the animals, making sure they're spayed or neutered, but also education, going out to schools and talking to people through the media to get them more knowledgeable about what to do with animals is an important part of our work.
So are we seeing this trend the same nationwide, or is Cincinnati unique?
No, it's nationwide, unfortunately, and everyone out there. It's a community-wide problem, it's a statewide problem, and it's a nationwide problem that everyone has to be a participant in helping resolve.
Chuck, a livestock facility that has a lot of numbers like your farm, many instances is described as a factory farm. Does that mean animals are being mistreated?
No. I don't know of any correlation between the quality of care of the animals and the size of the organization caring for them. If you have your family pets, you have people that do a good job, you have people that do a poor job. If you have a large organization, like mine, for example, it hinges on the quality of the management and the people. It's why labor is a risk. You've got to have good labor. So I don't correlate the care with the size. I correlate it with the quality of the people and the management issues that are involved. And there's a myriad of them. So Harry's touched on some of those, and there's certainly others.
Does it bother you when somebody calls your farm a factory farm?
Well, it sort of depends what they mean by the term factory farm. You get your car from a factory. You do that for a reason. Because they make 10,000 cars, let's say, they make them all the same. If they discover there's a problem with something in that process, they go back and they fix that part. They have a system. If you're going to harvest tomatoes out of your garden and make them into salsa, put them in, can them, you're going to set up a process. So if you make the first batch and it didn't turn out right, you can change something in the process. So in my organization's called a factory farm, we set up processes in that effort to limit risk. So if you want to look at it that way, I don't have problems with that. Many times the animal welfare, the animal rights community more specifically, we use factory farming in a derogatory term. I think they're trying to imply that the animals are nothing more than dollars. And all I'm interested in is the dollars. And there's some level of that that's true. But as Harry said, there's 16,000 pets that show up at his door every year that didn't have dollars attached to them. I can tell you every one of mine was well cared for and lived a long, purposeful life because there was an economic value. You know, if dog and cat breeding were driven by supply and demand, you wouldn't have an oversupply of dog and cat breeding. But it's not. It can run willy-nilly on its own. But in the production agriculture, it doesn't. A pig is born because it has a home to go to. So there's different things intended by those words. And in our society, words have a lot of power.
Dr. Proudfoot, in bovine research, is part of the goal to discover what makes cows comfortable so producers can use that information to increase productivity and care for their animals more humanely? Or is there another reason for what you're doing?
The main reason for what I do is to improve the animals in, like for instance, on a farm like Chuck's. In my case, it would be a dairy farm, using knowledge about animal behavior. So unfortunately, we can't ask pigs and chickens and cows questions, or well, we could ask them questions, they're just not going to answer us. So instead, it's important to look into what kind of environments are well suited for different animals at different stages in their life. So an example of some of my most recent research up in the University of British Columbia in Canada, I was very interested in the time period around a cow's life when she gives birth, which a dairy cow has to give birth once a year in order to produce milk. But during this time, she could have painful labor complications. She's at risk of disease right after that. So there's been lots of research in that area, but no one has really asked the cow what kind of environment she wants to be in when she is having the baby. So my research, the first thing we did was we looked into what a cow would do in a more natural setting. So in a more natural setting, like on a cow-calf operation in the beef industry, cows will leave the herd and will find a hidden, secluded area to calve, like tall grass or like tree cover. But in a commercial setting, sometimes it might be difficult for her to hide when she's ready to give birth. So we created a maternity pen where she had the choice, where she could go to a more open area, or she could hide if she wanted to. And we found that cows did, in fact, even in a barn, they still want to hide when they're ready to have their baby, especially if they calved in the daytime when there's a lot of activity and noise in the barn. So we can use that information to try to provide practical solutions to farmers that might have a lot of problems with their cows around that period, to help them to create more practical environments that also accommodate the cow's behavior. So the next steps would be to see if those kinds of environments would reduce some of the disease and labor complications that we see with dairy cows.
I want to ask, because you weren't born and raised on a farm.
Nope.
You're a city girl.
I'm a city girl.
So getting into the veterinary side of things, did you bring a different perspective than someone coming from the farm?
I think I did. I'm a born and raised city girl, but I lived and worked on a dairy farm on and off for about 8 years. So I'm a city girl converted to a country girl. But I think I do bring a different perspective because I wasn't raised on a farm. So for me, coming into it, I had an outsider's view. I could see the farm from how the public could see the farm. I'm also a scientist at heart, so of course I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible and focus on the science. But I think it has given me a very good perspective, and it's allowed me, hopefully, to be a bridge between those two communities as well.
Chuck, let me ask you, when you're looking for hired help, would you like to have someone from a non-farm background to come into your facility to work?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a person-by-person, case-by-case situation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with an absolute greenhorn novice coming in, because then they can learn from me our systems and our ways and our attitudes and what I expect the attitude of an employee to be towards animals, towards other people, towards the facility. When you bring in someone that has background, you gain that experience, you gain that wealth of knowledge. You know, that's part of the value of larger organizations. You're concentrating knowledge and facilities and academics in one organization. That's why we as society set up large universities. You can set up large hospitals, so you have all those resources in one place. We build large cities. So it's kind of a natural pressure for things to get larger because of the additional resources. So your question is, I'm fine with someone with no knowledge, I'm fine with people with knowledge. It sort of depends, what do you need at that point in time?
Sure. Well, let's talk about the importance of providing accurate information. How challenging, Chuck, let me ask you first of all as a producer, how challenging is it to deal with social media and all of the things that's going on in that arena?
Oh, I love social media. I mean,
I know you do.
Social media is the window for me to the world. I don't know the consumer if I don't have social media. I mean, to a rural person, I mean, I'm very involved in my local church. It's 3 miles up the road. Before social media, I would go to church. I had nothing to talk to the non-farm ladies, men about, because I didn't know what was going on in their lives. With social media, there's a marked change in that. So I love social media. It does present the challenge that perception, image, is everything. So now there's a new risk in my environment that I have to manage. So you'll spend your time mowing the grass, picking up the junk, cleaning the office space, things that are going to show up on YouTube. You're thinking through your mind, what's this going to look like? Even if you're doing things the university would sanction as, man, that's right. What's it going to look like? So perception and it's another risk you have to manage. So it's quite a challenge.
Harry, but what about from your standpoint?
I think that an animal's well-being has taken on a whole new persona. It used to be they shouldn't be thirsty and they shouldn't be hungry. But now we're talking about discomfort. Well, discomfort in what way? That is becoming more of a defined area. Is it just shelter, or does it mean environment totally? You look at natural movements, as Katie alluded to. An animal should be able to stand up, sit down, do things that they normally do in other situations, and how they're confined is making a distinct difference in well-being. So explaining that thoroughly is incumbent, I think, on all of us to do that.
Katie, from a veterinary standpoint, has all of this talk through social media or the internet or whatever, has it pointed folks to the profession that says, you know, this is something I think I need to be involved in and to make a difference?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I can answer it really well yet, but vet school is one of the most competitive professional schools out there. I think it's either more competitive or as competitive as med school. So there's a lot of people that still want to get into vet school. And as soon as I started, just last year, I've had students knocking on my door constantly about wanting to get into this field. So there's definitely a lot of interest. I don't know where it's coming from, but it likely could be coming from seeing it on social media. So it's certainly growing as an interest.
Yeah. Let me give you my perception. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, it seemed to me that the veterinary profession attracted those who always had a love for animals. A lot of farm kids wanting to bring that back to the rural area. In my mind now, that's changed, where we have a lot of other folks outside of agriculture that are in the profession. Maybe not large animal, but small animal. Mm-hmm. Am I close?
You're right in the sense that the demographics of the vet school have changed, where right now a majority of students are small animal. And I don't think it used to be such a disproportionate number of students that are small animal versus large animal.
How does that impact you, Chuck?
It's becoming a very real problem. Right now in Ohio, I'm aware of 2, maybe 3 veterinarians that specialize in swine. And with the changing in current laws of, again, risk on antibiotic use, we're going to have more and more prescriptions. Prescriptions require that the veterinarian have a working knowledge of a herd, which means a certain amount of contact with a herd, so he's not just writing prescriptions on phone calls. So how do you get those? How do you spread those 2 or 3 across the entire state of Ohio? Ohio is the 9th largest pork producer in the United States. So not having large animal vet practices is becoming quite a challenge. Can technology and media, social media, help with that? Yes, I think it can. Being able to post a video of an animal and send it to your veterinarian for their inspection. Does that meet legal standards? That's a whole nother discussion. But all these risks swirl around out here. And I love the work that the universities do on many of these things. Temple Grandin certainly has brought a lot of focus to this. There's things that the work they do, what space do we provide to this cow during her birthing process can impact her. You know, that's really usable information. Sow housing's been a hot topic for a number of years in Ohio, and there's trade-offs in that. There's stress to tighter housing, there's stresses to looser housing. The consumer doesn't always see what those trade-offs are, and going all natural out in a field is an entirely different set of stresses. So there's trade-offs. It's not a right or a wrong, it's trade-offs. And understanding those trade-offs becomes the trick.
That's what keeps my life so interesting. I also want to say too that in terms of social media, I think a lot of people are becoming more and more aware and interested in where their food comes from. So I'd optimistically like to think that they're doing a little bit more research on where their food comes from too. And it's really important to have people like Chuck who are out there saying, this is what my farm looks like, this is what we do, when there's so much misinformation out there that paints a bad picture on the industry or paints a too perfect picture on the industry as well. So it's really important to have really genuine stories of producers that are doing wonderful things and taking good care of their animals, and I think that will engage people and will help with the dialogue and help students even be converted from city people to country people like I was. And I think it's happening. I really do think it is.
That's our show for today. Thanks to our panelists, and thanks to you for watching.
This program is made possible thanks to the generous support from the Ohio Farm Bureau members, producing our food, growing our economy, and making communities stronger. The Ohio Farm Bureau, forging a partnership between farmers and consumers. And by
Nationwide's family of companies has a variety of products to protect your family, with our promise to be there when you need us, from city to farm. Nationwide is on your side.
Funding for Our Ohio is also made possible by the generous support from Turner Farm, a working organic farm and education center in Indian Hill, Ohio. And by your membership support to this public television station. Thank you.